We are live. What's going on, guys? It is Michael here, Rocket Real Estate Investing. I'm so excited today because I got a gentleman on here. He is crushing it out in Florida, and I'm just excited to share with everyone kind of his story and how he got started and what he's doing today. And so get ready for some gold nuggets. And if you're interested in flipping, or if you have friends interested in flipping, make sure to share this out there to others because we are going to drop some bombs today. So get ready. And without further ado, Victor, welcome to the Rocket REI Live podcast, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share some tips, get into it, and share some wisdom for people in the real estate game or who want to get into the real estate game.
Absolutely. So really, man, tell people like who you are and how kind of you got into this real estate thing.
Sure. So my name is Victor. I'm primarily a fix and flipper. So I primarily do fix and flips. I've done it pretty much everything like wholesaling. I've done like Airbnb, rentals, Burr, but I really like the flips the most. That's what I really focus on. I invest primarily in my local area, like Gainesville, Alachua County. I did about 20 flips last year, on track to do 30 flips this year. And just doing more deals, bigger deals, better deals is the goal. And yeah, basically got into it. So luckily it's a family business with regards to when I got started. Like my family got started a while back in Utah with rentals. And I was 14 and I was helping out, just, like whatever a 14-year-old could do was basically how I was helping out. Like, okay, rip out this carpet. Okay, help with the painting. Okay, help with the flooring, or like grab me the flooring, like basic stuff. So I got started there young, luckily. So I learned a little bit of the renovation side of it. Got my own first deal, a little condo for $55,000 back in when I was 18. That was my first deal, and that was my first one. And then kind of did some other things when it came to like entrepreneurship and career, so on and so forth. Went into healthcare, but then I found out like, hey, I actually really like this real estate stuff. I want to get back into it, so I went full time with real estate. About 2.5 years ago, and here I am doing fix and flips and loving every day of it.
Awesome, man. That's incredible. So I heard a couple things. I heard you say Utah. I heard you say college, and then moving to Florida. So break that down a little bit. I mean, obviously you had some family in Utah. They must be really happy with buying maybe properties back years ago and with how the Utah market is right now. But yeah, break that down for listeners. Like, did you finish college or what's that look like?
No, good question. So I was really studious in high school, so I got a full ride scholarship to college. Went to University of Utah. I was studying bioengineering. It made sense for me to do engineering because everyone in the family is an engineer. Mom's a chemical engineer, brother's a mechanical engineer, uncle, I can go down the entire list. And so I'm like, okay, I'll go into engineering. Realized it wasn't for me. I'm like, hey, this is not for me. I didn't like the coursework. I didn't like what I was learning. They'd bring in people who are 5, 10, 15 years ahead of us in terms of career. Like, hey, this is where you're going to be. I was like, oh shoot, I don't want to be doing that stuff. This is I don't like this road I'm on, basically. So let me get off. It didn't make sense to me so before I get into that, I was always entrepreneurial. So always wanted to like do business or become a business owner. So it never made sense to me like, okay, let's go to school for that. Cause I could have switched degrees, go to like business or economics or something, but never made sense to me like go to school to learn entrepreneurship. So that never made sense to me. So I was like, let me just drop out and try to do this business thing. So that's how I picked it up. So I didn't finish college. I was about 2 years into a 4-year program, full ride. People at the time called me crazy, but it's worked out since then.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. And honestly, I think a lot of people, the expectation is to go to college and feel that they have to do that. Otherwise, they're not going to be successful. But you made a good point. Entrepreneurship is a very unique thing. It's not something that a college professor who's never ran a business may be able to speak to, as well as maybe you getting mentored by somebody else or just jumping into it and learning from your family. So it sounds like that route has worked for you, where you kind of just jumped in. And I'm sure your family had taught you a thing or two, but did you take any courses, or how did you learn everything that you've found about real estate.
Yeah, for sure. And then a real quick note on college. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with college. Like if you want to be an engineer, an accountant, a lawyer, it makes sense to do that. I just want to say like there's other options. Like it's not step one college is, there's other options, other avenues to get at what you want. You need to really understand what you want first. So with regards to coaching and mentoring, so what happened, at the time I was working like a corporate job in healthcare. I tried some businesses, failed at a lot of businesses, and I wanted to get back into real estate. So what happened was talking to a friend of mine about it. He knew a friend of a friend was Chris Chico, who is a relatively big name in this space. He taught Facebook ads. And what was crazy, like Facebook ads blew me away, where you would get deals from Facebook. I was like, this is the craziest thing ever. Like you put an ad and you get a property. Like that just blew me away. So I got connected to Chico, and what happened? So at first, we reached out about like the mentoring services, like, oh, what can I do the mentoring? It was just out of my budget, out of my price range. I just couldn't do it. Luckily, Chris Chico had a opening position, so he had let go his cold caller. He was doing cold calling. He was wholesaling at the time, and he had just let go of the girl. So he was in search of that other person. So he gave me a shot, and he was going to teach me the business and taught me the business. And it's basically like a commission-only job. But I worked with him 3, 4, 5 months total, and just learned the business. And it was a huge blessing to say the least. So luckily, I had a mentor to teach me a lot of the wholesaling and acquisition side of things.
That's incredible, man. So I didn't realize that. So Chris Chico was kind of your mentor then for the 3 to 4 months that you learned from him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, he's the pioneer that I know of Facebook ads. Facebook ads have been around pretty much ever since Facebook has started, but this niche really, I don't think has implemented them as much. I know it's a lot more common nowadays. So let's talk about that. Do you use that in your business model today to find sellers to buy houses from?
Not today, no. So I did in the past. There's nothing wrong with Facebook ads, but I found like other cheaper, also effective methods to get deals. So not to say I won't necessarily use it in the future. I'm definitely open to it. But when let's say I'm getting leads at, let's say $20 per lead or $30 per lead, it doesn't make sense to me to pay like 50, 60, 70 costs per lead. Again, I'm open to that in the future, but just not right now. It doesn't really make sense for me. But Facebook ads are great, and get some really cool deals that way.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It definitely works, but like you said, you kind of compare apples to apples. You see the cost per lead, and at some point, you got to make a choice and focus in on one thing. So, sounds like cold calling then was your thing, and is that still working for you today?
Yeah, for sure. So I get about half my deals working with wholesalers, and about half my deals I source on my own. And that's typically like cold calling, sometimes MLS, but not too frequently. A lot of like different free methods as well, like for sale by owner and some other stuff, but website referral, etc. But that's roughly the breakdown. So the cold calling works. I mean, I think that's going to work forever. But it's the basic of calling someone on the phone. So that's pretty much the breakdown of how I get my deals.
Got you, man. So half from referrals. That's a very high number from referrals. What's the secret to getting that many referrals? Is it just networking, or how do you get that many leads from wholesalers?
So for the wholesalers, it's just building a good relationship. Like for example, just building a good relationship, and if just supporting them in any way possible. So there's a lot of value there. Going above and beyond. I like to just build a relationship where it's not just trading apples or a horse trade, this for that. It's more like where I explain my numbers, like, hey, this is what I got for ARV. Hey, this is what I got for my repairs. That puts me at this offer. So I'm really transparent. I don't try to beat them up on price. I just say like, hey, this is where I'm at. Let me know if this is a good fit. Is my perspective on that. So that's how I break it down. I know because I was a wholesaler, so my first 2 deals were wholesale deals. First one made $3,000, second one made $3,500, and I never liked being like squeezed in the middle. And then people like nickel and diming me. They would make 20, 30, 40,000, but they would nickel and dime me over $1,000. So I never liked that. So that's why I applied it in my own business, working with wholesalers. Like I try to work with them as much as possible.
Gotcha. So a lot of listeners may be, just getting started, or maybe, some very experienced people here. But I think wholesaling is kind of the natural progression to getting into real estate, is just because you just figure the ins and outs of how the leads come in, how to capitalize and close the deals. And then, like you said, eventually you realize, well, shoot, I don't like how this is feeling, being stuck in the middle. I'm leaving money on the table. So then you figured out how to start buying properties. So then what did that look like when you first got started? Because it sounds like you had a business that didn't go over as well as you wanted it to. So maybe had a bad taste in your mouth from that. And then to start just buying houses, like how do you get the money to do that? And like, can you talk about that a little bit?
Of course. No, yeah, happy to. So from the interim of me dropping out of college to getting back into real estate, like I had some failed businesses. I wasn't tip top financially, to put it that way, where I wasn't, millionaire status, anything close to that. I was actually in the hole. I was in the negative quite a bit. So basically, so I did those 2 wholesale deals, and then it made sense to me where like, hey, these other people are taking down the deal for 20, 30, 40,000. That's how much they're going to make. I should start taking down these deals. And then I was also confident in my numbers. Like, hey, I know I can sell it for this much. I know this is how much repairs are. And a lot of the cash buyers back then would like beat me up on the price and on the repairs. Like, hey, no way. Because they're, part of their negotiation tactic is they just try to beat me up when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I was confident in those numbers. So I was like, okay, let me start doing these deals myself. So basically what happened, I got a deal under contract, couldn't wholesale it, so I ended up taking it down myself. Basically what I did, I found what's called a money partner, and basically they put in all the money, and I was a sweat equity. I found the deal. I would help run renovations. I would help sell the place. So I was the sweat equity. I was the boots on the ground. I found the deal. They put in the money, and then we did a profit split. So I had back then like a low 500 credit score, a couple thousand in the bank. So it definitely worked out for me. And instead of making, 3,000, 3,500, I made much more than that. So it was a huge benefit, huge bonus. And then, just kept on working with them, and then found another money partner, and then started to accumulate my own cash, and then started to do my own deals. So it's been a real cool progression, but that's pretty much it. So that's the recommendation for the audience. Like, even if you can find a money partner, someone who has money sitting in the bank, doesn't want it to sit in the bank, wants to put it to work and make good money, especially with real estate, with a real asset, then there's a lot of value there. And again, if you so for me, it was 70-30. I can give you the split. They got 70, I got 30. And you might say, hey, that's kind of unfair, but I don't think it is, because I am where I am today because I was able to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so good, because so many people, I think, have a fear of, well, how do I take this deal and I don't have any experience or the money? And so you just found somebody who did have the experience and the money, and then you just added value to their situation. And then also you made another good point. Man, there's so much money out there just sitting in the banks, sitting in accounts and stuff. And I don't think people quite realize like how good of interest rates people can earn by working with investors like ourselves to just fund the project and have it backed by real estate. It's a beautiful concept. So if you're like me, I mean, I'm always looking for partners like that, and it's just a win-win scenario for sure.
No, I'm 100% with you there. And again, it's the value of getting started. So my first year did 2 flips, then did 8, then did 20, and then did 30. But I had to get started somewhere. And the earlier you get started, like, it is that exponential growth if you want it to be. So that's why you need to get started ASAP, because you'll be surprised where you're at 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, once you get on that train.
For sure. So then, have you been in this game for a few years then, or how long have you? When was your first deal?
So yeah, the first deal was when I was 18. That was just little rental condo. I ended up selling that one like a year or two later for the same price I got it at. When I dropped out of college, I tried another business. It was like a wood floor refinishing business that didn't go well, and basically put me in a lot of debt. So I sold the house, that condo, for what I put into it, and then just got out of it just to help pay down some of those debts. I should have kept it, knowing what I know now, but that person ended up selling it a couple years later for 110. So they doubled their money. But it's a learning lesson, to say the least. But yeah, so I got started. First deal was when I was 18, like my own first deal. And then like personally getting started with my flips like 2.5 years ago. I'm 27 now, just turned 27. So,
okay,
yeah,
cool. So then you've done very well with flipping. 20 flips in a year is impressive, and it's a lot of work. We've flipped quite a few houses in 2019 and last year as well. I think what's important is you realize that you couldn't do all of the work yourself for those projects. So what's that look like on a day-to-day basis to manage that many projects throughout the entire year? Like, do you have a contractor teams, or what's that look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. So to give more context, when I started, it was a lot of like do it yourself. Like I'd help out with painting, I'd help out with demo, I'd help out with flooring. Like a lot of this easier stuff I'd help out on. If it was like roofing, I can't handle that. We'd hire it out. So that was the progression. That's where I started, especially on that first deal, just helped out as much as I could. And then started to realize like, hey, I can't be at these properties working all day if I'm also trying to get deals. So switch to the model where like, okay, I would more like a done with you model. So I would like hire a painter. Okay, gets the painting done, pay him. Okay, hire a flooring guy. Okay, once he gets it done, pay him. So went through that progression. Then I realized like, hey, I'm still getting a lot of my time tied up on these properties. So the next progression was, okay, I need someone who can handle the deal and project A to Z, whether that's like a general contractor, more of a project manager. So nowadays I have that project manager. So she runs it. She does an excellent job, handles everything A to Z. We just do a weekly check-in just to make sure everything's on track. But that's the model now. And then I can focus on higher value or higher return things. And that's like finding deals, finding money, whatever needs to be done that's higher value is then my next focus.
I love that. So you're focusing your energies on money producing activities versus, no offense, but like painting for you is not a good use of your time.
Right.
And so it sounds like you have decided to make that higher, but isn't that more expensive to hire a project manager in the long run, or not so much?
I'd argue that.
By the way.
Oh, right. No, sorry to interrupt, but I'd argue the opposite actually. So with the painting and the flooring, like I wasn't that good at it. That's the other thing. Like I'm not a flooring guy. I'm not a painter. I've done it a handful of times, and I can, lift a brush or I can lift the roller, but it's not like I did a great job. So like even if I did save money, it was still like I'd get dinged on the back end. Like it wouldn't be as quality, so wouldn't get as much seller interest, so it wouldn't sell for as much. So I would even argue like it's more expensive to do it the cheap way.
I would agree.
That saying, like I can't afford to make a cheap hire or something like that. And I was the cheapest hire out there, and I couldn't afford myself basically. So I even argue that just having someone who's good, who's decent, would do a better job. And then there were times where because I was so swamped, like I'd make a bad hire or I'd miss a detail and it'd cost me more. So it's one of those things like just having someone who can focus on that is just super valuable.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And the teamwork. You can't grow that big without a team, and you could, but you might be losing money in the long run by trying to take the cheap route. So
yeah,
we've absolutely learned that lesson a time or two. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I want to definitely add to that. So the team makes a big difference. So I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Like I'd rather have 20% growth in my business for 50 years than 90% growth for 10 years. So if you do the math with exponential growth and all that, the 20% for 50 years yields you like multiple, a much bigger business just because you're compounding for such a long time. So I think about that quite a bit. So like, yes, you can handle everything and do everything on your own, but like how long can you really do that before getting burnt out? Like, can you really do that for a year, 2 years? Can you do that for a decade? Like literally doing everything. So I'd much rather, take it with a team, and you can, still grow fast. I'm not saying that, but you can take it with a team, kind of take it slower, but just be able to do it more sustainably. Like I don't want you to burn out and do this for a couple of years and then you're out of the game. I'd rather you be in it for the long term and see those exponential growth, curve there.
100%. That's phenomenal advice, because I think a lot of investors, when they get started, they just work 16 hours a day, and sometimes that's what it takes to get success in this business. But you can only do that for so long until you just completely burn out. And if you can, then great. But overall, exactly what you said. Teamwork is going to have that long-term success and growth in a business. So very good advice there. And so also, Victor, I kind of want to touch on the fact that you help other real estate investors. I think that's really cool. You've proven success, and you also are able to give back. So what's that look like?
Yeah,
people who may
for
be
sure.
interested.
So, I flip houses myself, but I also teach people how to flip houses. I teach people nationwide how to do it. Like, how do you get your first deal? How do you get to 6 figures? People always ask me, like, how do I get the money? How do I get the deals? How do I run contractors? How do I run numbers? So I teach all of that. And it became just a natural outgrowth. So as I was doing more deals and seeing more success, people would hear about it. People would reach out like, hey, I want to get started. Hey, I want to do this as well. And I just teach them, I give them advice. And then I realized, like, whenever I gave free advice, and was it for free, then people wouldn't really take it seriously, or they wouldn't, like, they'd hit a speed bump and just give up. But when I started charging for the advice, I don't charge a lot. I make it super affordable. Then people took the advice seriously, and they went out and they did it, and they had, like, skin in the game, and they made it happen, and they'd pay me, X, and then make, 10X out there on their first flip. So that's what I've been doing recently. What's also interesting, like, for me to go from, let's say I do not 30 flips this year, but 31 flips, they'd be like, well, this is cool. That's pretty neat. Did an extra flip. Great. But for me to help someone go from 0 flips to their first flip, that's like, whoa, that's cool. That's exciting. That makes the whole week. That's like, okay, this is awesome. So there's also that aspect too. Like, it's fun to give back.
Absolutely. Well, and for you, I mean, your time is worth something, right? And you're taking away from your business, but it is so rewarding, and it's so cool that you're doing that to help others, because we've done it a little bit to help some people get started, and it's extremely rewarding. So very cool. Well, at the end, we'll talk about how people can, hear more about that as well. So what would you say to somebody who may be wanting to get started flipping houses, or may want to take that leap of faith, who's just, like, overwhelmed with all the material out there and don't know what to do or where to start?
Yeah, no, definitely a good question. I'd recommend, when I do my teaching and mentoring, I recommend, like, taking little baby steps, because one thing to jump right into it, it's another thing just to, like, ease your way into it slowly. So I always recommend the first step is, so get out there, and instead of, like, just talk to a seller. You don't have to make an offer, just talk to a seller. Like, get out there and get in that practice, get in that momentum. So that's the first step. That's, like, the first baby step. Second one is to make an offer. Make an offer to a seller. And then the third baby step is make a lowball offer. Whatever they're asking, cut in half, make a 50% offer. A lot of people are anxious and scared, like, oh, what if I do a lowball offer and they yell at me, or they're mad at me, or something bad happens because I gave a lowball offer. And that really holds them back. That fear and anxiety really holds them back from actually getting out there. But once you do it, you realize, like, people are really nice. They'll probably politely decline, and just go from there. But at least you get into that habit, you get into that practice. So that's what I recommend. Just get started, but get started in, like, little baby steps, and you'll be surprised where you're at. If you continue at this pace and continue to get out there. But making a huge leap, like, hey, I'm going to make 50 offers this weekend, it's just not going to happen. I've seen that over and over, where people are like, I've never done a deal. I'm going to make 50 offers this weekend. I'm going to get a deal, and they just, like, push it off because it's such a massive undertaking.
Oh yeah, well, analysis paralysis is a real thing, and so, like you said, just get out there, take the first step, take the action, and you're only going to get better. And so I have to ask, because you said make an offer, like a low ball offer, and that's like horrifying for some people. I know for me it was like, and this seller's going to, like, kick me out of his house. But over time, you get better about the way you present that offer. So is there any, like, tip that you could provide from your experience on how to present that low ball offer versus saying, my offer's 10,000 on your $100,000 house? Like, what's your advice for that?
So I would recommend just to frame it in the context, like, hey, you say up front, like, hey, it's a cash offer. We pay all closing costs. We pay, realtor commissions, all that good stuff. So just to frame it as a cash offer up front, I think there's value in that, because if people know it's a cash offer, there's value and benefits and convenience to that. If they think you're coming in at half offer and it's like FHA, or they're not sure what kind of financing, there's a little more resistance there. I think that, and then the other thing is you just got to do it. Once you start with that low offer, you can always go up on the offer, and you kind of step back, or you can kind of backpedal if they're like, hell no, 50,000, that's way too low, or that's way too low, that's not going to happen. You can say like, hey, I'm so sorry, this is just a starting point. I want to get the conversation going. Happy to find a middle ground. So you can always backpedal or kind of raise your price. You can never lower your price, is what I've found. So just throwing your offer out there is key. And that's when the truth comes out. That's what I found as well. As soon as you throw out that first offer, they might say like, oh, we've actually had higher offers, or hey, I can't sell it for that much because I owe this much on it. Once you throw that offer out there, like the truth comes out. Up until then, maybe they weren't being truthful, or they weren't giving you the full story, or there might be something else going on. But once you put that offer, it becomes real, and the truth comes out is what I've seen over and over again.
Money talks, and that's what a lot of people want to know. It's like, what's your offer? What's your offer? It's like, well, okay, if you want to hear my offer, here's what I'd like to be half price. Like, that sounds good to me. Well, of course that's not going to work for you. I know that. So that's where you said backpedal. And that's so true, because you can. I've almost had people hang up on me multiple times because they're like, oh, if you're even close to that, like, we don't need to keep talking. It's like, okay, well, I understand that. That's where I would like to be. But what about you? Like, then you're feeling them out, and then you can work to a price that may hopefully be mutually beneficial. So good advice there on that. So thank you. Kind of like want to talk about a deal. So I always like to talk about a specific deal. I call it like the deal deep dive here. And so do you have one that comes to mind? Maybe it was just a slam dunk deal, or maybe it was a learning experience for you. Do you have one you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I have a lot of options here, luckily. So do you want to talk about my first one, the one that got me started? Do you want to talk about my worst deal? Or any preference?
Let's talk about one that's really exciting, or maybe you did great on it, like a fun deal.
We can talk about a fun deal, yeah. So this is one of the best deals we've done. So we ended up netting about 54K net profit. It was almost a surprise. It was basically, we didn't expect to get that much. So what happened, we bought the place for 74. We ended up putting like 15 into it, and then we sold it for 158. So bought it for 74, put in 15, sold for 158. So netted again like 54K. What had happened? So we bought the property. This was pre-Corona, so we bought it pre-Corona, and then Corona happened, and like we were kind of in the middle of renovations. We're like, oh shoot, this isn't good. We were still able to sell it though, and we still got like multiple offers and still did really well. But that's right when it was kind of taken off and getting bad. So what was interesting about this property is it was on a Superfund site. You know what a Superfund site is? Okay, so Superfund site. So basically, there had been some sort of contamination. There was like in the 70s or the 50s, a long time ago, they had like a lead plant, and they're like generating lead or some sort of like metallic negative, pollution. And back then they wouldn't dispose of it properly. So I guess they just kind of threw it around, in the neighborhoods. I don't know what they did with it, but it's basically a Superfund site. So they had a pollution area, and basically we're going through Superfund is like the company would repay for the damages done, for like the pollutants and negative damages done. So the Superfund site was going to be done and expire in 2020. So that's when they were done. It was fully decontaminated, fully like back to normal, fresh, no sign of any negative thing. You could eat the dirt if you really wanted to. So that's when it got lifted. That's when we were selling the property. So when we bought the property, we were thinking like, oh, we can probably sell it for, 120 or something like that. And because of that Superfund site lifting, like there's a lot less concern about that. So house prices just jumped up. So they jumped up, and we got a couple good comps like the month before we were going to sell it. So we're able to get, not 120, but 158. So we were able to jump up, I don't know what that is, 10, 20%, because the Superfund site was expiring. So that was a deal. That was a really lucky deal, to say the least. It was a home run deal, best so far. But just really exciting and just pure luck, honestly. Like we didn't know that I was on that Superfund site until like we were about to sell it. So
man, this Superfund site thing almost seems make believe, but it sounds like it's a legitimate like term, right? Superfund.
Yeah. You can look it up. You can fact check me on that.
Okay. Well, I learned something new on every one of these, so that's pretty cool. Bottom line is you did better than expected. Did you list it for that higher price, or did you just have a bidding war, or both?
We did list it for that higher price. We ended up listing it for 159, and then we got 157.5. And the other lucky thing on that was we actually got a cash offer, so that made it even better.
Gotta love that.
We could have gone conventional FHA, any sort of financing, but we got a cash offer, so that made life really easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good thing. But let's talk about what the reality is of this business sometimes, which is, it's not always HGTV, guys. I'm sorry to break it to you. What's been your biggest challenge or biggest mistake, would you say, since you've started flipping?
Ooh, biggest challenge. I think when it comes to this, there's a speed at which you want to scale. So I wouldn't recommend a lot of folks to do what I did, where they did 2 and then 8, then 20. That's pretty tough. That's pretty tough to do, especially manage cash flow and manage all those projects. So I recommend just growing more slowly. Like first year do 1, then next year do 2, then the year after that do 4. It'll just be a lot more comfortable for folks, especially if you're still working full time. There's still a lot of value in doing this on the side and then jumping into it when you're more comfortable. So what happened a couple times is I would buy one property, and I would make the same mistake repeated on 2 other properties. So let's say buy 3 properties in a month. And on the first property, I made some sort of assumption on the repairs. Second property made that same assumption. A third property made that same assumption. And I was wrong on all of them. So I'd multiply my mistake. So I didn't make a $5,000 error once. I'd make a $5,000 error 3 times. So that happened a couple times. So that's probably the struggle. That's some of the real side of it. Is if you grow too fast, then there's some negatives to it. Each of those deals was still profitable. Don't get me wrong. I'd still do them today. But it's just one of those things where it's just got to watch out and not grow too fast. That's the other thing, especially when flipping. You're putting your money into deals and you have your money tied up for a while, and then you pull your money out. So there's a lot of times where I was just really tight on cash. I was asset rich, but cash poor, as they say. So that's part of the reason you don't want to scale too fast. So just taking everything into consideration. It seems flashy, did so many flips this year and he just got started. But at the same time, there's the flip side of that coin. Just trying to manage everything, trying to finance everything. I was able to get it done, and that's fine. But it was stressful at times, to say the least.
So what specifically about those? Were they renovation repairs, or was it a roof or something like that? Because I know for us, roofs have cost us more money when we were flipping a lot more than ever. Just because we didn't assess the roof close enough, or we didn't look at the insurance before we bought it on hail damage or something like that. So specifically, was there one thing, or was it just a variety of different things that cost money?
Just a variety of things. It's just a variety of things, honestly. I think on one of them, I think I was just low on flooring cost. So I thought it was going to be, $2,000, for example, and it turned out to be $3,000 just based on how we set it up. So stuff like that. Nothing huge, but enough that, it became an issue.
Right. So then I would assume taking a closer look at the repair cost, the cost of goods, the materials, would help avoid somebody from making that same mistake.
Yeah, I'd say so. Just know your numbers. At the same time, you have to act with imperfect action. So it's not just I need to know my numbers down to the cent before I can buy something. It's just a part of the learning process. So the takeaway isn't don't do deals unless you know your exact repair costs. The takeaway is don't do a ton of deals at once if you haven't even done one. I always recommend for my students, do one deal A to Z, complete it, and then do your next one. A lot of folks try to double down. They get one and they get excited, so they buy another one, and they fall in that same trap that I did, where you make the same mistake over and over. So that's the takeaway. Yes, know your costs because that's important, but you don't have to nickel and dime everything just to be able to do a deal.
Right on. So have you ever lost money on a flip?
Luckily, no. We've had deals where we wanted to make 30 and ended up making 10. Never lost money on a flip, luckily. So that's a good track record. It's happened where you make 10K and you put a ton of time and effort and energy into it, and you're happy to be gone with the property and done with it. And then you look at the end of the day, balance how much you made. It's I made 10,000. It took me 6 months and hundreds of hours and all that stuff. And, it was a headache and I lost sleep and that sort of thing, but never lost money, luckily.
That's good. No, it's fun to ask that question to people who flip a lot of properties, because I know for us, we've never lost money either, but we've came pretty close. We've almost broke even on a project that took longer than expected, cost more than expected, didn't sell for, all the things. And then you wholesale and you make 15,000. You could have wholesaled and made 15,000 if you would have just got in and out. And it's like, man, why did I not do that? But it's just, that's how you learn, right? So no, that's cool. So thanks for sharing that. Let's see here. I always like to ask is, I think I'm a reader, as you can tell in the back here. If you're watching this live, I got a bookshelf behind me.
Nice.
What's your favorite book? Is there a book that you would recommend, or do you read?
Oh, so what I've done recently. So when I was younger, what I would do, I'd like read a book a week, or like, I'd read a ton, and it'd be like a new book every week. But then what I did, so I ended up like looking back like a year later, like, hey, I read all these books. Is my life any better? Has anything really changed? And the answer was unfortunately no. So it's like taking in all this new information, but not really doing anything with it. So I ended up flipping that on its head. And instead of like reading, 10 mediocre books once, I would read one great book, one awesome book 10 times. And when you read a book over and over again, like new information stands out, it becomes more of a part of you. It becomes kind of more embedded into your subconscious, and it becomes more tangible, more real, more actionable. So I've done that with the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. I've read that book. I have an audiobook. I've listened to it, read it 15, 20 times, just over and over again. And just every time, like new lessons, stand out to me, and new things appear, and it's like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. And just maybe I'm in a different part of my life, so different chapters stand out to me. So that's the book I recommend for folks. Good to Great. Just a fantastic book about growing a company and changing from mediocre to excellent. That's highly recommended for that one.
Awesome, I love it. That's a good book. I need to read that 10 more times. Read it once.
That's right.
All right. So then, it's kind of wrapping up, man. I respect your time. I want to keep it to minimum here. Before we move on, I want to open it up as if there's anyone watching that has any questions. And while you're thinking of your question for Viktor, I'm going to ask him is, what's one final thought or piece of advice that you would want to leave listeners with?
I would say I want to reiterate the value of getting started. So whatever problem you think you have to get started, like, oh, I don't know how to find a deal, or I don't know how to find money, or I don't know how to estimate repairs, like all of those problems have a solution, and people have solved those problems before. So there's obviously someone out there doing it. So there's a lot of value in that. But I recommend, just to build on what I said before, like just really get started. You'll be surprised on that exponential growth where you're going to be at a year from now, or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, as long as you just get started now. And it might feel like at first you're not making a lot of progress in the first month. Maybe you're out there making offers, but none of those offers are getting accepted. So it's kind of, it's kind of not fun at that point. Like, hey, is this going to happen? Is this going to, am I ever going to get a deal? But, once you start to get that growth and that momentum, then your results and your actions start to take bigger effect, and you'll start to see it. So just really getting started, you can even get started today. I can give that as a challenge for the folks listening, where, get out there and just make that first phone call to a seller. And again, don't make an offer, just talk to them. Like, what's the condition of the property? Why are you selling? How much are you looking to get for it? Just like simple questions. The phone call can be, 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But that's what I'd recommend. Just get started, even if it's in a small way.
I love it. Well, I have one more question for you that I just thought of. What do you think about the market right now, with just how hot it is and everything going on? And can you speak to what most people would think is too much competition?
Yeah. So what's really interesting. So my theory when it comes to flipping, because you're on both sides of the transaction. So both sides of the transaction. So you're buying the property, obviously, and you're selling the property. My thoughts are it's always the same amount of difficulty. So either, and this is where we're at now, where it's really hard to buy a property, but super easy to sell it. Like if you sell something and it's half decent, you'll get multiple offers in the first couple of days. It'll get sold, and it'll go fantastic. So that's where we're at now. It's really hard to buy, really easy to sell. I think just naturally the pendulum has to swing the other way. It can't be hot forever. It has to swing back the other way. Eventually, I don't know when, and it's impossible to time it. And
Right.
then the swing, it's going to be super easy to buy a property, but harder to sell a property. And then your set of problems becomes a little bit different. So that's how I see it there. In regards to the market being hot, like, yeah, it's definitely hot. There are still deals out there. Like, yes, there's competition. There are still deals out there. I'm still doing deals. It's definitely harder. But then keep in mind, it's going to be easier on the back end. Like, once you sell the place, it's going to be, it's going to fly off the shelf.
That's great advice. Yeah. I mean, it's one or the other, right? You got to pick your hard.
Pick your hard. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Choose your hard. Cool. Well, hey man, I want to thank you so much. It's been awesome. Thank you for all the gold nuggets. I hope anyone who's watching this, I got value, likes it, shares it, tells everyone about it. And for people who want to know more about you, where can they learn more about you?
Yeah, great. So as mentioned, I also teach people how to get started flipping. If you want to look me up on Facebook, I'm very active there. Just Viktor Jiracek. If you type in my full name, luckily there's not a lot of different Viktor Jiraceks. It's a very unique name, so you'll find me. You'll stumble upon me. I also have a free Facebook group if you want to look that up. I talk about my deals, talk about tips, tricks, how to get started. That's Six Figure House Flipper. Six Figure House Flipper is the name of the Facebook group, and you can join. There's a lot of free good stuff in there. So that's the best way to reach me. So Facebook is my preferred medium.
Awesome. All right, guys, check it out. Six Figure House Flipper on Facebook. So much free value out there. Honestly, for people who want to get in this business, there are lots of excuses, but there really is no excuse. So I would encourage everyone to get out there today, make that call, take the action, join Viktor's Facebook group, and make it a great day. Until next time, friends, we'll see you later. Thanks, Viktor.
Thanks for having me.